everybody, and welcome to What's the Story podcast. This is WTS 320. My name's Danny Murray.
I'm Graham Merrigan.
Nearly caught you off guard there. You're looking at your phone, Graham Merrigan.
Sorry, I was just looking at the scores.
Very, very unprofessional.
I didn't even know there was football on tonight, Danny.
Yeah.
As in your football.
Yeah, as we're recording this, Manchester United Football Club are playing FC 20 in the Europa League? Or one of them?
Is it conference or Europa?
The Europa League.
They won the cup, so they won the FA Cup, didn't they? Yeah, it's Europa League.
Yeah, there's a banner on the side of the pitch that I've just seen there that said Europa League as opposed to Europa Conference. And yeah, anyway, look, that's me being distracted by football when we were trying to record a podcast. This is why I shouldn't have to tell you on the background, Graham. Very unprofessional. Very unprofessional. How are you? I'm good. I was about to ask you the same thing.
You've a new hairstyle that I'm digging. Or is it just lazy?
I was out earlier on, and the weather has gone very chilly, so I had a hat on, and I didn't brush my hair before we hit record. So it's not the usual.
How are you feeling about it?
I mean, this is just what my hair looks like when I don't brush it. So grand.
But I think you can put on a 3-piece suit there and still look the part.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much. I'll take that. Yeah. I don't know. It's a relatively fresh cut as well. I think it was only cut there at the weekend, so that probably helps.
I need a cut soon.
But yeah, man. Yeah. Otherwise, all good. It's gone very chilly, I think. I don't know. I don't want this turning into a weather chat rant like that, but just then the last time we hit record, it felt like it was summer, and now I'm sitting here and I'm like, Jesus, I think I'll have to turn the heating on.
Yeah, well, I walked the dog today to Kilbogga, and it was 8 degrees. Last week, I remember walking the dog to Kilbogga in the morning, same time, about 11, 12, and it was 13, 14 degrees. So that definitely has been a drop, and I got fucking pissed on the way home.
And how much do you have to pay for that?
Suggsy got pissed on as well, and then he had his groom today, so that was grand.
Oh, lovely. I think people who've been listening to this podcast for a long time, this conversation probably tracks the evolution of the podcast when you consider back when we started, it was full of energy and we were doing things like going to Vegas and record and now here we are of a Wednesday evening talking about needing to turn on the heating and the weather.
I'm walking the dog and getting the dog groomed.
It's a long way we've come from talking about antics in Vegas and
look, we're still together.
After all these years.
Will
I move on to our guest, Graham?
Yes, let's go straight into it. No kissing.
Absolutely brilliant. Our guest this week is a comedian, actor, writer, performer, radio host, wrestler, modern day Renaissance man all round. Ross Browne. Ross is absolutely hilarious, lads, and he's just one of the nicest guys going. You can catch him on Cork's 96 FM alongside Lorraine doing the breakfast show there. Or if you want to catch his stand-up, he's 2 shows coming up in October, one in the Civic Theatre in Tala, one in Roshi and Dove in County Galway. If you go to Ross Browne official or Ross Browne comedy on the social medias, you'll see more. But yeah, a really good guy. And here's our chat with him. Ross Browne, thank you very much for your time, man, and welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm delighted to be on. It's a great podcast. I was listening to Fergal Devitt's episode, only the most recent one, about 4 or 5 days ago.
Lovely, man.
That's great, yeah.
And he's an old friend of yours, Ross.
Yeah, me and Fergal met. Fergal was, he's considerably older than me. He was, I think he was 18 and I was 15. We started training over in Hammerlock in the UK in Kent on the same day. And I had to lie to get there because you have to be 18 to train. So I showed up at 15 and I was like, yeah, I'm definitely 18, guys. My parents dropped me off and everything. It was a dead giveaway.
And come here, did you like just on the spot train? It was like, here, introduce yourselves, and it's like, yeah, we're both from Ireland. Was that it, or
yeah, like I went over there, like Fergal looked like he was from fucking Italy or something. Like he's a handsome devil, like, and he's tanned and sallow and everything. And then Paul Tracy was there as well. So it was me, Paul, and Fergal both arrived. They arrived together, obviously, because they were friends. And I got there, and straight away you can spot the Irish straight away, like, and they were very, very, very quiet back in the day. Like, I mean, they really kind of, and to their credit, because I'm quite loud and extroverted, so I immediately had a target on my back, and the two lads just kind of like went under the radar for the first like week, and then they kind of like slowly kind of like became like just going, oh, there are two nice lads, whereas I was probably just being dumped in my head because they were like, this fucker won't shut up.
He's only 15 as well.
He's only 15, yeah. Actual child abuse.
Yeah. Jesus, yeah. So how long ago was that then, Ross?
2000 and was it the year 2000? I think.
Jesus.
Yeah, I think it was the year 2000. Yeah, just about to turn 16 in December, and it was the August of that year.
And when did you start doing the comedy then?
So yeah, I interviewed Tommy Tiernan for my old school for a project thing that they were doing, and about a year later I went to see him in doing a gig in Cork. And when I was interviewing him, I kind of said afterwards, geez, I'd love to, stand-up's always something that I've wanted to do. What advice would you give me? And he said, just write. That's the only advice I'll give you, is just write. And then I met him like 8 months or 10 months later at the gig, and he was like, oh, you're the guy. He goes, did you take my advice? Did you write? And I was like, oh, did you? And he goes, right. He goes, he called a support act over, Jerry Mallon, and he said, can you give him 10 minutes in Galway? And Jerry Mallon was like, you're on next week on the Saturday night. And I hadn't written anything. You're hardly going to tell Tommy Tiernan, no, I didn't take advice at all. So ever the procrastinator, then I had to write 10 minutes of material in like 5 days. But yeah, so
it's unreal though, isn't it?
Yeah,
I love that you remembered.
Unreal. And like I did a gig there, and then I didn't gig then again for like another year. So I didn't really start gigging properly until I was about 22, 23. And that's when I kind of started to gig regularly. So like I tried it once, I tried it again, and then it was like, not until I kind of hit 22, 23, that's when I started to kind of taking it seriously and gigging more often.
How long did you give it with the wrestling?
What's that?
How long did you give it with the wrestling?
I wrestled, I'd say I wrestled until about 2006, and then I packed it in for about 8 or 9 years. I wasn't ever going to wrestle again because my shoulders were in bits, and I was being taken away in an ambulance every second show at one stage. So, yeah, and not down to like anything ridiculous. I'm just very clumsy, and then I came back in like 2015, 2016. I wanted to try and do a run that I thought that I could, like, because back in the day when we did like NWA Ireland in the beginning, it was very much your community hall shows in front of, kids and families and stuff like that. And the shows were very, I suppose, each show was very standalone. So like you could be, and nothing was continued. And I was mad into like story, and I was mad into kind of like building stuff, but it was very fragmented. So you could be doing a show in Kildare and you could be a baby face, and then the next night you could be in Bray and you could be a heel. And I was mad going like, we need to build this big long 1 year storyline. So when I came back in 2015, 2016, I kind of just strong-armed them into saying, I want to do this 100% my way, and I have to do it the way that I envision it, and just trust me to do it that way. And it was odd because I had to do it. I had to work the wrestlers as well, because I didn't think that anybody would play ball with it. So I had to actually work the wrestlers to the point where people were ringing up the promoter saying they didn't want to work with me because they were afraid in case I was going to shoot on them. But I was like, no, that's the reaction I want. So then everything felt real. And then I kind of clued everyone in and kind of went like, guys, I'm just working, like. But there was
bit of a Brian Pillman.
There was some hairy moments where kind of people were going, because my character when I came back was, you're all fake wrestlers and I'm the only real one. So I kind of inverted the perception of wrestling, and I thought there's no point us all pretending this is real. And we're at a stage when everybody was openly saying in every interview that we're all best friends and we're all just working out our matches backstage. So I said, okay, I was always trying to fool people. Even when I first started wrestling in the UK, like the best compliment I ever got was like this 75-year-old boy came up to me after a match, and he was like, He goes, "Oh, I haven't seen proper wrestling in years." He said, "It's not like that American stuff. This is the real wrestling." And I was like, I got it. Like, and that's some guy that used to watch Giant Haystacks and Roller Boy Rocco back in the 70s, and I fooled him, like, you know. So we did some wild stuff in the UK. We did a show over there, and it was all the Irish wrestlers went over, and then they had their English wrestlers over there, and every match was Ireland versus England, and then each country got a point respectively for each match, and then a country would win at the end, and obviously it was on English soil, so England would win the show, but they'd booked it unevenly so that there was too many English wrestlers and not enough Irish wrestlers, and the matches didn't add up. So I went to Andre and I said, "Andre, why don't you put me on with Carl O'Rourke?" And he was like, "But that doesn't work." He said, "No one's going to get a point." I said, "Let me go out and cut a promo and say I want to represent England, because all the Irish wrestlers are being cocky and arrogant. And to be honest with you, it's disgraceful." And I went out there with an English jersey and started the England chants and all that stuff. And me and Carl decided we were going to do full force punches and all that kind of stuff and just dig the head off each other. And we got to one point in the match where me and Carl both reared back to hit each other. And then we both smiled. And then I took off the English jersey and I laid across my chest, and then he pinned me. And the place went fucking ape shit. And then, of course, I had the Union Jack and I was doing the Shawn Michaels in between the crotch and all this kind of stuff. And me and Carl were chased into the back by people throwing chairs and stuff like that. And we had to be locked into a room in the dressing room. And we had to be, there was, I think Johnny Moss or John Ryan was told to stay at the door as well. And they had to take down the ring, put everything away. And then we were literally then let out of that room. And then we were told to hop into the back of the van with the ring, and they drove like a kilometre down the road and then let us out and get us into the cab, because there was people waiting outside in the car park for us. So we were like, "Oh, we've done our job.
We made it."
Yeah. Yeah. For 20 quid.
In the 2015 run, was that with OTT or who was it with?
No, it was with CCW.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they did a show down in Waterford, and I went down there just to commentate. And then I jumped in the ring after the show, then called out the entire roster. And I had a plant in the ring, which was one of my trainees, but I dropped him off like 7 kilometers from the venue earlier that day and was like, "You need to walk there because we can't be seen together." And so I hit it. So I hit a fan, which was my plant. He cut all his side because he fell between the guardrails, so he was in bits. I dropped F-bombs on the show, and it was a family show, because I wanted to do all the things that shouldn't, if everything went wrong, I was like, well, what would those things be for the company if this guy went rogue? And I called everyone out, and I said some despicable stuff. But I said, I have to do that because it has to be something that would actually enrage the wrestlers in real life. And not all of them were privy to the fact that I was working. So when they threw me out of the building, some of them were thinking they were really throwing me out of the building. And then because of that, I basically told the 2 guys that were running the show, I said, "Don't put up anything on social media about this." I said, "Go media blackout on this. Don't put anything up. Let me write the statements from ye saying that, look, what happened the other night was completely unprofessional. It had nothing to do with us. We were trying to put on a good show for you. This guy went into business for himself, and he will not be working with us in the future." And then I started doing call-out videos on the company saying that they're afraid to let me wrestle and all this kind of stuff. And then I had them release a statement saying that the only way that they can have me wrestle is if they do an over 18 show. And then that was the first over 18 show in the country then. So we but then one of the guys left me a comment on Facebook saying, "Best of luck tonight." I was like, "Lads."
Kayfabe, lads, kayfabe.
Like, it's mad. I'm such an easygoing person, but when it came to wrestling, it actually did bring out it brought out a bit of an arsehole side of me, because I took it so seriously that I used to get very frustrated and very angry by people that I felt didn't at least didn't have the same ethos that I had. And it's only when I stepped away from it then that I was like, we're rolling around in our underpants. Like, do you know what I mean? So, but when I was doing it, I was always trying to do something that felt a little bit different. So I think I was a little too proud of what I was trying to do there. So
it sounded like a bit of a Gorilla Monsoon or Bret Hart there, who was obsessed with kayfabe.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I would Jesus. Like, I remember being up in Bray, and it was a guy called Beautiful Benny B and myself. And this was the first time we ran shows in Bray when Paul and Fergal did. And me and Benny had this kind of rivalry going. And then me and Benny were out one night. All the wrestlers were out in back bar in Bray on the seafront, and I had somebody pass a message to Benny to say, "Do you want to start a full-blown fight in here tonight?" And then start basically legitimately trying to cut what is a promo, but is essentially me saying, "I'm going to kick the fucking head off you tomorrow night at that wrestling show." And the place was jammed because the two of us started digging the head off each other and got kicked out of the pub.
Bad for life, unbelievable.
In fairness, back bar isn't somewhere that you'd miss anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's all right being barred from somewhere like
exactly,
that.
Yeah, exactly. If it was George Doyle's now, you'd be saying something.
What type of wrestlers did you look up to growing up? Like, who did you take inspiration from, or did you?
I mean, I suppose, like, you know, as a kid and as a teenager, I suppose it was always the usual, like, you know, you got caught up in the Austin thing, and you got caught up in Shawn Michaels was a massive, I was a massive fan of Shawn Michaels, and then Austin, and then Mick Foley was a massive influence on me, just in terms of more so promos and character work and stuff like that, and also making it look like he was always hurt. Like, his selling was fantastic. It's that quiet selling that I love, because whenever wrestlers are selling, they're loud and they're screaming and they're holding their back. But then whenever somebody actually breaks their arm, they get very fucking quiet and they keep their face in the mat. And I'm like, well, they should be selling like that if that's the case. Like, Bryan Danielson's one of the best sellers out there. Like, when he does the neck stuff and he does like the flicking of the arm and, you know, like trying to get the feeling back in the fingers, and he's not selling outwardly to the crowd. He's kind of selling to the ref and talking to the ref going, man, I think I'm fucking paralyzed here. That's great selling, because it's smaller and it draws the audience in because they want to see. They're going, oh, fuck, I think there could be something wrong. And every wrestler likes to spot, every wrestling fan wants to spot a real moment. You know, that's why everybody thinks that the Montreal Screwjob was a work, because they all want to spot that real moment or spot which was real and which wasn't. So I think when you can do things that are smaller, like William Regal is one of my all-time favorites because his detail work is second to none, you know. I love people that do like joint manipulation and finger locks and all that stuff, and, you know, guys like that where you're kind of going like, it's so small, but it looks like the guy's just trying to maim somebody. So love that. And I love.
I remember growing up, and when you're growing up and you're kind of in the 90s and you're kind of going, is it like before the whole Attitude Era, when you're still kind of pre 95, 94 maybe, and you're kind of thinking, is this actually real? Like, I remember watching Mr. Perfect against Bret Hart.
Is this real? Is that Bin Man doing part-time wrestling?
No, not that. Not Duke.
Melo sitting there being like, Isaac Yankum, I had a bad dentist there a while ago. Are they all like that?
Remember that era,
This Bastion Booger looks like a right tough old dude.
I'm probably talking even earlier then. I didn't want to give away my age. No, but the Perfect and Bret Hart match, and they're throwing digs, and you're looking at it going, is that actually real? Because of both of their selling, you were getting into that trap of, that looks like a real dig there. That looked like a real kick.
Yeah, Piper was great. I mean, Piper's one of the all-time greats. Like, he was in every aspect. Like, he was phenomenal, especially the stuff that he did down in like the AWA in Mid-South and all that kind of stuff, when he was, you know, smashing beer bottles on his head against the sheep herders and stuff and cutting promos. I like Wild Men. I used to love Pillman when he first came into WWF because he had, you know, the loose cannon gimmick. I love Bret Hart because of the realism and because of the authenticity. Owen Hart was always fucking amazing, like just the most mechanically gifted and I think underrated wrestlers of all time. Like, he was phenomenal. Used to love Jeff Jarrett. Yeah, Jeff Jarrett I used to love. And of course, obviously, you know, when you're a kid and stuff like that, you like your Diesels and your Razor Ramones and all that kind of stuff as well, like, you know. But I always for some reason got sucked in by the guys that were doing like Kurt Hennig as well. Like, fucking hell, dude was unbelievable. Rick Martel was fantastic. You know, all those guys, real good workers, solid workers. But then you're kind of going like, Jesus, they were leaps and bounds ahead of where the business was. And it just so happened that on the top of the hierarchy, you had your cartoon characters, which was your Hulk Hogan's, your Ultimate Warriors. But really, the term workhorse, I suppose, these guys were probably 25 years ahead. Because if you put those guys into NXT, the way they were wrestling in 92, 93, the place would be standing up chanting, "This is wrestling," like, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know what's funny there? You mentioned the sheep herders. I saw in an internet a wrestling page, fan page, maybe about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they were talking about the sheep herders, which we probably know more commonly as the bushwhackers.
Yeah.
And I read, or on it was like a YouTube 6-minute documentary. These as family friendly bushwhackers, but in the previous era, they were the sheep herders. I think they're the only workers that got a 5-star rating from Dave Meltzer and a -5-star rating from Dave Meltzer from their work in WWF. But isn't it hilarious when you look back and you see their gimmick entering the ring, the way they walk, march to the ring, and licking people's faces?
Yeah. Licking children's faces in the fucking... Yeah, and I think that was just. I think they were just so beat up at that stage because they looked like two old dudes, like, you know. So I think they were so beat up. Get the paycheck because they'd done all the work, like, you know what I mean.
But anybody should go back and look at sheep herders matches on YouTube in Mid South and AWA. They're absolutely mentalers.
Yeah, bonkers. Yeah, and I love that wild man thing as well. Like when you look at Japanese wrestling and you look at your Stan Hansens and your Bruiser Brodies and all that kind of stuff. That even Sabu used to have that kind of aura, and the Sheik as well, where they'd jump the guardrail and the fans would run away from them, like, and they'd fling a chair, or they'd swipe an arm at somebody, like, and all of a sudden, like, Abdullah the Butcher had the same vibe as well. He'd jump the rail and all of a sudden there'd be like a scatter of 50 Japanese men running in opposite directions. You're going, that's an aura, like that's when you're really kind of, there's believability there because people are so cynical. Nobody wants to run away from a grown man with self-respect. So the fact that they were willing to was like, oh, these guys are shitting themselves, like.
Will you watch the Mr. McMahon Netflix doc?
Yes, my friend. I'm just going to plug in my laptop there because it's draining the battery.
Water.
Yeah, my friend from school. She has no interest in wrestling, but she just sent me the link to. She's like, "This looks like it's up your street." I was like, "I'm already on it." I was like, I'll be watching an episode of that tonight probably, as soon as I get back. I think they're half hours or whatever, but it's
55-minute episodes.
Oh, is it 55 minutes? Oh wow.
Yeah, Danny pissed through it today. I'm episode 4.
Yeah.
What did you make of it? Did it live up to the grim expectation?
I think if you already know the story and you already know the skit, you're not going to learn a huge amount, but you're still going to watch it and you're still going to say, he's a mad, diabolical fucker. Like, you know what I mean? There's no other way of, like, he's just, and like that, like even some of the stuff you was talking about there, just the nostalgia as you're watching it, and you kind of see clips from like that late 80s, early 90s, and some of the stuff that was going on, and you're just like, you kind of, like, Vince McMahon was involved in so many fucking things and there were so many things going on that you kind of forget some of them over the years.
Yeah.
And this just gives you a little kind of like, talk about a cat having 9 lives. Hasn't got shit on Vince McMahon, like.
No, and there's so many things as well that I don't think anyone will ever know. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many rumors, like the Snuka thing, like all those kind of things.
And that gets brought up in it. And you mentioned Owen Hart, the Owen Hart death also. I was kind of, now, in one sense, was half expecting to get brought up, but I wasn't expecting them to get Vince to talk about it, but Vince actually talks about it, and I was like, okay, that's like, I've never heard Vince really talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, see, I think with the fact that when it was first filmed, or when they first interviewed McMahon, he thought this was going to be like, this is my career spanning thing. So I think he was willing to talk about certain things because he thought it was at least going to be framed about his creative genius. And then all of a sudden, when the accusations came out, they had that footage and then were able to frame it against the truth. So really, he probably shouldn't have signed that release form straight away.
Yeah, and he tried to buy it. He tried to buy it up until last week, I believe, to bin it.
Yeah.
Really?
But, he tried to buy it, yeah. I'm on episode 4, and I'm not, obviously, if you're been watching the business for all these many years, you're not going to be surprised. But you're watching it and you're remembering, and it's bringing you back, and then you're kind of going, Jesus, how did they get away with it? Like, and then they keep referencing pop culture in America at the time that all the TV stations were targeting 18 to 34-year-old males, and that's why the women got their breasts out, and that's why you know. But there is a quote in it where he's like, "We didn't use knives, we didn't use guns, and we didn't use can't remember the third one." And the literal producers are shown where they use knives,
Yeah.
where they tried to slice Val Venus's flute off.
Yeah.
They used guns
Remember
with
that,
Pillman in his room or in his house, his
Yeah.
actual real house with his
Yeah.
wife. He didn't tell his wife what he was going to do.
To get the
Just
reaction out of her.
Kayfabe,
just
lads.
wanted a
Kayfabe.
reaction. Kayfabe, like it's Steve Austin comes through the house, like he gets a gun now and pretends to shoot him. You know, so he's just a megalomaniac, absolute dirtbag.
Well, the fact that he pitched to Stephanie when she was pregnant to be like, let's do a storyline where I'm the father of the like, come on, red flag right there. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, it's his own daughter.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Madness.
What, like, you know, from listening to Fergal talking on your podcast as well, and just from like conversations I've had with him and stuff, you know, throughout the years and stuff, it does look like they've come through they're on the other side of something. And I think the fact that Hunter's in charge of the booking, I mean, that's what people were always waiting for, and they always thought it was going to be when Vince dies, and it's expedited the process. But I even saw this week now that at the end of at SmackDown they had executive producers, Paul Levesque and somebody else as well, and some of the stuff that they're shooting since they got rid of Kevin Dunn, the production has gone massively up. You know, those long pan shots that they're doing, you know, they started with those shots that started backstage and the camera followed the wrestler all of us out. They did some promo with Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. I saw a little clip of last week as well, which was like in an empty football stadium, and it looked like it looked like something out of like a Netflix TV show, like a drama. So they're really kind of I think they're trying to push for a kind of a half shift into something that's different. I think they're trying to go, oh, this will be a very distinct period or shift in the way wrestling is presented, which is interesting. I'm watching AEW with my daughter now. She's mad into AEW, and I think she likes the rough and readiness of it, and you know, I think she's invested now in it. But I'm sitting back watching WWE, going, oh, they're doing some good stuff.
And for the next few months, Raw is 2 hours until January.
Yeah,
so it might be easier to watch. But having said that, SmackDown was 3 hours until January.
Yeah, but, I do think they might start moving people from the Raw roster to SmackDown, because people will be they'll be starved of airtime on WWE on Raw, because it's 2 hours. And I think Netflix will probably stick with the 2 hour format as well, because they don't have to sell advertising now. They don't have to. They're not beholden to advertisers that need those 8 ad breaks rather than those 6 ad breaks or whatever it is. So I think when they go to Netflix, it'll be 2 hours, and then maybe SmackDown will follow in 3 or 5 years once their deal is up. But I do envision all WWE programming will probably be on Netflix by like, what are we in now, 2024, by 2020.
I think that's the plan already, and think that's the deal as well with NXT as well.
Yeah.
I think the network is still with Peacock until 2026 in America, but I think in Europe, I think we'll see the WWE library on Netflix from January. So I believe. I could be wrong on that now.
Yeah.
Were you always wanting to be a performer, Ross? Like it started with professional wrestling.
Yeah, always. I was always obsessed with like Jim Carrey. I was always obsessed with comedy actors, Jerry Lewis. Like I had real old taste. My dad used to show me loads of different bits and pieces. And then stand-up wise, everything from Lee Evans to Billy Connolly to Steve Martin, anything I could see at all, I was obsessed with. And I didn't know how you could do it. I always just thought that these were these special people. I didn't realize that there was levels to it. I didn't realize that there were clubs where people could just go and do 5 minutes. I just thought these are just these amazing people who can do this thing. So it was always an aspiration. Acting was probably the thing that I thought would be feasible, because stand-up I didn't understand at all. I just thought, who are these crazy dudes that are up on stage, you know, just talking? But who gave them a mic? Like, I'm like, what's going on? So yeah, it was probably like the likes of Jim Carrey and stuff like that, and then Ardal O'Hanlon and Father Ted when I was younger and stuff like that. That I was like, okay, I could see myself doing something like this. And then once I got older and I realized, oh, there's comedy clubs, then I was on that like a fly on shit. Like
it's mad when you say that about the acting and about kind of the performing bit of it, because years ago, like I done stand up for a while, and wouldn't expect you to remember because I didn't do very long. I've done two or three gigs on the
Yeah.
same thing as you, right? Crackdown in Cork was one of them when Con and Dave used to run it
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And in Hardy Har, but there was a night where you and Adam done, I think, was it Bourneville and Cadbury, as you used to call the double act.
Yeah.
And man, like the place was fucking doubled out. Like the whole place was doubled over, and that to me, I was like, this is a different type of. This isn't just like getting on stage and telling a few jokes or whatever. Like it was a performance, and there wasn't really anything I felt at the time that was like that performative comedy, if you get me. And it was
Yeah,
just it was so different to see that, but it was fucking brilliant. Like,
yeah, that was we did two versions of it. Was that the detectives?
yes, the
two,
detectives.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we did a game show after that as well. We just tried to see if we could play around with like putting these characters in different situations. But Bourneville and Cadbury were, so I started writing a TV pilot with Adam, and it was basically two detectives, one called John Bourneville and one called John Cadbury. And it one is smooth and rich, the other one is thick. And so we wrote it, and it was very kind of like in the style of like Police Squad, Naked Gun, but more contemporary and a little bit darker as well, and more kind of like more of a pastiche of like your BBC kind of drama comedies, like your Killing Eves and stuff like that before Killing Eve was even out, or your CSIs and all that kind of stuff. So we wrote a couple of episodes, and then we said like let's just try this live. And we were like, what would these two detectives be doing? And we were like, right, they've been fired, and they're now doing safety kind of crime seminars for the audience. And it's like how to spot a criminal, how to protect yourself in your home, how to identify a criminal with like face printing, because not all criminals have hands, but they all have faces. So that is actually probably my favorite thing I've ever done live, of everything I've ever done. And me and Adam still talk about it going, we got to do more Bourneville and Cadbury.
Yeah, like it was fucking brilliant. And like being in the room that night watching it, and it was a good night overall. Like everyone was there was nobody that really died in their arse ratting, but that just blew everyone away. And it was just another level. But as like that performance element of it, because the two of you guys have chemistry to beat the band. Like,
yeah.
So it was just, please do bring it back. Please do.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if Adam's going to take too many more toaster shots to the head. I did it once in Waterford with him, and I split him open, and he was like, dude, I'm bleeding. And I was like, if we could do this every night, it'd be great. We're after getting a great reaction from the toaster shots.
It's real to me, damn it.
Yeah. Sell the head.
And when did you take up the radio gig then? Because that's going brilliant for you as well.
Yeah, in I suppose 2016, 2017, they got on to me and they asked me would I be interested in doing like a comedy sketch every morning for like 5 mornings a week. Basically like a gift grub kind of thing, like 8:10 in the morning on the breakfast show that was there. I would just record hidden microphone sketches, parody songs, sketches, all that kind of stuff. And I pre-record them. I do them all on my own. I just do my own stuff, edit them myself, send them to the guy Nick Richards, who did the breakfast show at the time, and then he'd put them on. And then after he left, I was asked that I want to be the co-host of the breakfast show, the actual show itself. So I did that. And then last year, in July of last year, then we got a new breakfast show then, which is myself, Lorraine, and we have a producer called Shane Bucks as well. And that is the fucking absolute best crack. Like, I always saw radio as like, I'm a gun for hire. I've never had a passion for radio. There's a lot of people that are in radio that are like broadcast nerds. They know everything, and they're in, and I always felt like an outsider. I always felt like I'm just here to be funny. I'm like fucking, I'm just in here to snipe some jokes, and then that's it. And I never really had a passion for it. But once my old co-host left and Lorraine and Bucks came in, I was like, oh, this now feels like, now I can see why people are passionate about it. Like it was just a 180 completely that I took. And I even went into to the bosses of the station and I said, ye have me now. And I said, like, back then, and I told them, but I used to always tell them, lads, I don't give a fuck. I come in, I do my shit, and I go home. Whereas I was like, I'm going to be hounding you fuckers because we're going pushing this to the moon, like, So, it's all down to relationships. Like that's what it is. The passion wasn't there for the old show because it just didn't feel like it was a team, or it didn't feel like, when you're with somebody and you're doing something with somebody, but when when it doesn't feel like they're on the same team as you, and
you're only a blow in.
Yeah, but not even that. But it almost felt like there was competition, even though there shouldn't have been competition. Right. And I was like, the only thing that matters is the bit, the joke, the show, the link, whatever. And it just didn't feel like that was coming back to me. And it just felt like maybe that there was that would then breed animosity. And I was like, I don't get this. So then I just mentally checked out. And it wasn't until then Lorraine and Bucks joined the show that I was like, now we all feel like we're completely, part of the same thing. We're all on the same page. Everyone's pushing for the same goal. Nothing jokes win every time. The crack wins every time. And since then, I've just been like, okay, this is, this feels now like I've started a totally different thing, even though it is the same thing, Yeah,
but it's mad when you're saying that, because like even, and I know we've harped on about wrestling a lot, which you probably didn't expect or whatever, but like, you always need the right dance partner. You know what I mean? Like, you can't, when you're doing anything that's performative, you can't have somebody who's pulling against you. You need to have that, we're both on the same page here. And if I take a swear, if you're coming with me and you're not going to fucking hit the anchor and go, whoa, what are you doing? Like, and that trust as well has to be there, I suppose. But it's great. And once you find that sort of, that balance in rate, like, it does come across on air. People, I think, do resonate better once they feel like, oh, these are genuinely having the crack. This isn't like forced. This isn't. So it's brilliant now. Like,
yeah. And the running gag on the old show was like, Ross has no friends, because I wouldn't hang out after the show, or I wouldn't do like drinks on a weekend or whatever. And now me and Lorraine and Bucks are just like, we went for breakfast yesterday. We went for lunch the day before. We're going playing paddle tennis. We're doing a park run on a Saturday. Like, living in each other's pockets now, like,
paddle tennis. What's going on there?
Oh, paddle tennis is everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, paddle tennis is for people that can't play tennis. That's basically what paddle tennis is. It's like, it's my shoulder.
Your old home has a whole paddle tennis courts, Danny.
Hang on, is this the thing that the posh people are calling padel?
Padel?
Is it the same? Is it the same thing?
Yeah, but Fitzpatrick's ever up there building 4 courts.
Jesus Christ!
Where we used to record this podcast up in Fitzpatrick's Castle Hotel in Killiney, the cheap plug. They have they've built on an old kind of car park. When we used to drive in down to the left.
Yeah.
They're now paddle tennis courts.
Padel, yeah, okay, all right, grand.
Yeah,
I've never heard of padel. Padel.
Did your friend tell you that when you were shopping in Lidl?
Yeah, they did.
Padel.
I'm almost certainly did. Yeah, anyway, look, right, it's grand. I'll be about a joke on that one. I'm just, paddle tennis. Jesus, lads, that's...
Yeah. See, I can't play normal tennis because of my shoulders. So my shoulders dislocate all the time. So paddle tennis, I can play because it's only a little paddle. I dislocated that like 28. I dislocated that 28 times, and I dislocated that 17 times. So
Jesus.
Yeah. Oh, there was nights when me and Fergal Dever were both trying to get our arms in beside each other at different points of the thing. Sitting there, like, "How are you getting on? No, not too bad, yeah."
Jeez, remember he did it at SummerSlam in the main event?
Yeah, that was when he won the championship for the first time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Talk about the time to do it.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask you, Ross. We spoke to PJ Gallagher loads over the years on this show, and he told us a hilarious story about filming naked camera. We asked him like, did any shots or whatever that didn't make air, like, why didn't they make air, or what was your favorite shot that didn't make air? And he told us that there was a shot in the zoo where Colin McDonald's character went up to a member of the public and asked him to leave because the gorillas were complaining that he kept sticking his fingers up at them. And your man was like, I didn't stick my finger up to no gorilla. And Colin McDonald's character was insisting, no, the gorilla told us you did. You keep the gorillas told us, they don't lie. Well, you can tell the gorilla I didn't stick any finger up at nobody. And he was fighting back and back. And PJ said your man didn't sign sign off the waiver to allow them to air it on the show. Now, when you were recording the Fear, did anything like that happen?
All the time. Yeah, all the time. I got punched by a guy one day, and I was trying to get I was trying to get punched for the whole first season, and then in season 2 I got a punch off a guy, and then I was like, yes, we got it, and then the director was like, we can never show that, and I was like, what? And he was like, we can never show you getting punched, and I was like, I've been telling you for a year I've wanted to get punched, and he was like, I just wanted to see if you'd actually achieve it. He was like, we can never show that.
Why did you get punched?
It was like a kind of a sweep and dig. I basically just kept following the guy with the gag, and I just kept pushing it too long, and he was trying to walk away, and I just kept following him. I was trying to get him to stick Nicorette patches on me all over my body to put it on places where I couldn't reach because I was down for a fag. And he fucking caught me on the jaw, and I was like, fuck. I was like, never show it. But there's loads of things, like you'd have people going like, lads, like fucking great sketch, you'd fill in something brilliant, then some fella would go, lads, I'm on the dole and I can't be seen to be like fucking lifting these barrels or whatever, and you're like, fuck. So loads of different instances like that. It's fucking so many things. And then you just got, sometimes the best people to wind up are cranky people that don't get the joke. Like, that's the best, you know what I mean? You don't want someone that's just always laughing. We wanted to have that kind of like, I always loved leaving. Again, it's like wrestling again. I never want to expose the bit. So my thing, and I always fought with like Peter Foote, who created Young Offenders. He was the producer. And I always fought Peter on this, and I always fought with Derek on this. And eventually I just had to kind of like 50-50, I do it their way and my way. Or else what I would do is, so I always wanted to leave the mark, and then I'd never tell them or come back as myself. I would just walk around a corner and then leave them with the whole kind of like the look around of like, what the fuck just happened? And then a runner would come up and say, hey, you're on a hidden camera show. I never liked the walking back to them going, hey, you're on a hidden camera show, because I always thought it looked cheesy, but they wanted it for the credits. So what I would do is what I figured out in year 2 was I would do the walk away, let them be bemused, and then I would come back and I would tell them it's a hidden camera show. So they had 2 options then. And what I would normally do then is I would do the reveal really shit so that they wouldn't use it. I just go back and be like, you're on a hidden camera show. And they were like, oh, cool. I'd be like, okay. I was like, they're definitely not supposed to put that on the show. So a lot of my sketches just ended with me just walking off into the distance.
It's funny you said there about that you spent the season wanting to be punched, because I remember watching that and thinking, when I was watching your sketches, I was thinking, this lad's very fucking brave. Now it all makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's you know what it is? The worse it feels in the moment, that's when you realize that's when it's going to look better on camera, because how bad it feels, it's awkward, it's like excruciatingly painful, like as in like, having these weird conversations with people, or them kind of being, I suppose, antagonized by you, or you kind of repeating the same thing over and over again, or whatever the thing is that makes it what would in the real world be the worst experience of your life, even to be in that situation. I was going, if this feels this awkward and terrible now, it's going to look better on camera. So I would push things to the nth degree then, and I would get like super up in people's kind of like personal space, especially if it was a guy. Like I'd get really close to them, so that you could feel the awkwardness even more, or, there's so many lines and things that didn't make the show, but I just threw them in to make the reaction and the real moment worse, knowing that line probably won't make it because it won't make sense, or I'd ask them a question that would piss them off that has nothing to do with the sketch, but now they're pissed off. And another technique that like you'd learn on the job, like we kind of figured it out as we went, but like one of the techniques, because people would always, especially Irish people, would go, are you taking the piss? Is this a joke? Is this a fucking show? And they'd be looking for cameras. So what I used to do is I used to ask them, were they taking the piss? So I'd be like, are you mocking me? Are you taking the piss out of me? And then they get defensive and they're like, no. And I'm like, are you filming me or something? And then they'd be like, no. And then they'd never think that we're doing it to them because I've accused them of it. So it's all these little manipulation things like that you're trying to. Sometimes you'd hand somebody something, like, sorry, can you just hold that for a second? And you go down to tie your shoe. And then you're like, no, they can't walk away because they're holding my phone. So unless you're filming in Dublin, in which case sometimes you lose a phone. But but it was all these little tricks that we learned. And I was fascinated by the psychology of that then. And then, you're doing it live and you've only got one take because it's a real life situation. So you're trying to like service the cameras, you're trying to, hit your marks that you planned out because you know where the cameraman will be. You're also trying to divert the mark's attention away from the guy who's 4 feet away with a camera, with a gear bag, with the hole cut out for the lens. Like, I used to look around and go, lads, there's no fucking way anybody is not going to spot you. And sometimes they'd point at a camera like 400 feet away on a big wide shot and go, I can see a man down there with the camera. And then there'd be a guy next to him pointing the camera up at his face in a gear bag, and your man wouldn't even spot it. Like, it's mental, the stuff that they would and wouldn't see. Like, so it was great because it was like you felt like a spy all day. You're just walking around trying to create these scenarios and like dupe people. Like, so
that was deadly crack.
You mentioned the young offenders there. Cork has had a bit of a purple patch in terms of the entertainment of late. Young offenders, what was it like being involved?
Fantastic. Really, really good. Really rewarding. Definitely up there as probably the biggest career highlight. Like doing Bourville and Cadbury is my favorite thing to do on stage, probably. Having an Amazon special is definitely a highlight. But then young offenders, because writing is so important to me, and I didn't get to do it for so many years on a professional level, that when I did get to do it, then I was just there was a lot of imposter syndrome going into it. I always felt like I was adjacent to the show. I always felt like the crew, if I ever showed up on set, would be like, who the fuck is this loser? Because I just had such an imposter syndrome, and people would be like, people will just be like, Peter brought his untalented friend to the set today. I had such an imposter syndrome, and it wasn't until the season 4, like season 3, season 2 and 3, I was writing on the show. I was writing with Peter in the room every day, or he'd say, hey, can you write this scene up, or can you do a draft of this, or can you write all the action for this, or can you write Connor's voiceover for this episode? And then like we'd be writing in the office then side by side, line for line, like, we'd be pitching lines to each other, and you see your stuff going into the show and stuff. And my favorite line that I wrote, I think it was in the first Christmas special, and again, it's like Peter is so generous that like whatever is funniest gets in, or whatever is best gets in, and he's so non-ego driven at all. He has got no ego, that like he'd often write something and then we'd come in a week later or 3 days later and he'd go, you wrote that line, did you? And I'm like, no, that's you. And he's like, no, I think that was you. And I was like, no, that's I'm like, I typed it, but you wrote it. And he's like, all right, I thought that was your line. It's very good. Right? So like he'd forget what he wrote and what I wrote. But there was a line in the Christmas special when Mairead is lying in the bed and she's really badly sick, and Connor and Jock and the family and the doctors are all standing around, and they're saying, look, she's really ill, and she's gonna have to stay in. And Jock lifts up her chart from the end of the bed and it goes, says here she's doing phenomenal. And he was like, and the doctor looks at him and goes, that says pneumonia. And he's like, oh. So when that line got in, I was over the moon. Like I was like, oh my god, that's such I was so proud of that joke. And then fast forward 2 years later, and then Peter's like, hey, do you want to write 3 episodes? So I felt like, year on year, there was a progression. And Peter was like, I'm leveling you up. He kept saying to me, like, I'm leveling you up. I'm giving you more responsibility every year and stuff like that. And then, this most recent season, then he asked me, do I want to write an episode? And then I wrote a first draft of every episode. So he said, just write all 6, do a first draft. And, we had kind of like an American writer's room, we'd all sat in and we broke the story and we knew what the beats were on 3 of the episodes. So I wrote those, and then he said, okay, why don't you try doing an episode on your own? It's totally up to you. I've got no ideas for it, so it's totally your episode. Go for that. And then I did that, and he said, do you want to do another one? And then I did that one, and then that one became so dense that we ended up splitting it in 2, and that became 5 and 6 of that, so. And Peter's always on it, like, if when they say like, oh, you wrote an episode, I say, yeah, but Peter's always writing on every episode as well. Peter will come in and it always has to have that, Peter fingerprint on it, and and the stuff that he puts into it, and he'll come in and go, love the episode, I'm going to change this to that, and you're like, oh, that makes it 10 times more, more interesting or funny or whatever. So it's mad. It's like, even though it's the creative world, I feel like I was doing an apprentice for an electrician or something. Do you know what I mean? Because that's the way it felt. It felt like I was like working underneath this kind of like master tradesman in writing, and that I was able to kind of like learn on the job and figure out what the mistakes were without having to make them myself, because he'd go, oh, that doesn't work for this reason, or that's good but it doesn't suit the show or doesn't suit the episode, and he'd kind of guide you and he'd push you in the right directions as well,
Yeah, no, it's brilliant, and it's amazing that you're such an integral part of that. The imposter syndrome thing's really interesting. Have you got that with any of your other kind of gigs and like?
Sorry, Ross, but Danny has imposter syndrome as well.
I'm always
Really,
fascinated. Always fascinating people. Oh man, I'm constantly just in a state of like, today's the day I'm found out. Today's like, do you know what like I log into work every morning. I'm like, today is the day to go. Can we have a word, please?
Yeah,
we've a meeting now.
Those aren't real glasses.
Yes.
Yeah, I do have imposter syndrome, and I think what I've figured out is that imposter syndrome actually just highlights to me that I care about something, because I don't get imposter syndrome, and I've got an abundance of confidence in the things that I don't not that I don't care about, but that I don't like value as much, that aren't deeply personally valuable to me. So, for example, before with the radio, I was like, I'm a gun for hire. And I'd walk in and I'd just be like, bang, 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 super confident, leave. And then we're writing, because it meant so much to me, I'd read back over something I wrote, and 100 people could tell me it's great, and I'm still like, I'm such a shit writer, With stand-up, when I'm working on a new show and stuff, I could do like, 4 or 5 tour dates, and then I'm still looking at it before the Opera House, and I'm like, am I a hack? Are they all going to say, we can see the strings? Oh, you just did that with that joke that you did with that joke. It's the same structure. So I'm constantly trying to figure out, is it actually that I feel like I'm a fraud, or is it just my brain's unconscious way of saying, hey, you really care about this, but because you can't actually acknowledge that you care about it that much, I'm going to scare you by saying this could all be taken away tonight. I think that's what it is. And I think as well, I think it comes down to your own perception of yourself. And I think if you feel like you're going to be exposed, it's probably an indicator that you have a pretty low opinion of yourself in that space or in that realm, that you go, oh, well, they're going to find out the truth. But if you peel that back, what you're saying is, this is how I feel about myself. And I think they're all going to figure it out too. So it's definitely something that needs to be pulled back on you, because all you're doing is you're projecting your own negativity onto other people. And someone said to me, they were like, why would you assume that all these people are such assholes? That they'd be like, look at this fake and a talentless fraud. And it's like, you're the asshole. You're an asshole to yourself, but you're actually saying they're going to think it, or they're going to say it, or they're going to realize it. Where in actual fact is that you're confronting your own lack of self-worth, I think.
Yeah. The brain is it's a mad interesting thing, and there's far more intelligent people out there to talk about these things than I. But I'm always fascinated when people just mention the imposter syndrome thing for that exact reason that you're talking about. Just hearing how other people process it and how other people approach it, and that, especially when it's somebody as talented as yourself, if you don't mind me saying, very successful in terms of your comedy, your radio, your TV appearances, and as we've discovered tonight as well, your ability to maintain kayfabe, even when the entire Irish wrestling industry was like, what the fuck is going on? So
yeah, but like that's mad, Ross. Like you get imposter syndrome. Like chronologically, Young Offenders is the most recent kind of job you probably had and got. But all the work you've done in the last 10, 15 years, you get asked to do Young Offenders. Do you, instead of thinking, oh, geez, would you not think it's hard work pays off?
No, I have a serious problem. No, I've got a real problem with looking back on anything that I've done as well. So when people are like, how was the Opera House? How was last week's gig? Or how did you get on down in Listowel? I just go, yeah, good, grand, yeah. And people are like, how do you feel? Like, are you buzzing after it? And I'm like, No, just on to the next thing. And for you, and it's gotten a bit better. My partner now has kind of like really made me sit in these moments and be like, dude, like especially with like speaking of young offenders, when those episodes came out, she was like, Ross, you need to sit in this moment and actually just fucking drink it in. Because she's like, what was all of the other stuff you've been doing for all these years for if you don't get to enjoy this bit? Because let's face it, you wouldn't have even thought that this was even a possibility to be writing on a BBC One show. So she was like, so just fucking take it and shut the fuck up. So I find it really hard to look back. I always ended up resenting my stand-up show that I'd previously done every year. I was like, that was fucking shit, but next year's show. So I was always pushing the goalpost further down away from myself. And for me, it was always just kind of going, that's just the way I am. I'm goal-driven. I'm goal-orientated. But really it was, I think what it is I find it very hard to accept a victory.
Yeah.
But it's mad the way you said that as well, because Fergal, I remember when Fergal turned heel with the Judgment Day, and about 7 or 8 weeks in, you could tell there was a shift in the backstage management, and obviously Triple H is a huge fan of his. But I remember texting him and saying, "This is unbelievable work, like."
Yeah.
And is it good? I haven't watched any of it. And I was like, what do you mean you haven't watched it? I don't watch myself. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like he's big, like he's huge all over the world. He's getting this huge main event spot, and he's not even watching any of it back.
But if you think about it, right, like everyone else's perception of Fergal is, and we're using Fergal as an example because we know him, so he's a nice touchstone. But like you look at any other actor, unless they're a sociopath, but like actor, comedian, musician, whatever, it's like they're just doing the thing that they do, and it's very natural. It's like a gardener gardening, right? But then they have so many people that are outside looking back at them, telling them how great they are, and that must feel, again, it does feel, because I've had people telling me, oh, this is great, or I really love that, or whatever. It doesn't feel real, because that's not a very natural thing to happen to humans. Yeah. Like if we lived in tribes, everybody wouldn't be fucking giving a standing ovation to a guy if he came back with a rabbit to cook that night. So we're not meant to be like en masse idolized, you know? So I think when people all tell you that, it's not that you don't appreciate it or you recognize it, but you almost have to push it away, because otherwise it's just going to eat away at you. And I think for Fergal, it's like, for example, he does his show, he hops in the car and he drives to the next town, or he drives home to his wife. He closes the door behind him, and he's like, all you're left with at the end of the day is what's in your own head, you know? And so I think if that isn't in a very secure, confident, self-assured place, it doesn't matter what you achieve, because you're still going to be sitting there going, if you think you're a piece of shit, or if you've got low self-esteem, like you could win a gold medal in the Olympics, or you could sell out Carnegie Hall or the Staples Center or headline WrestleMania. And if you think you're a shithead or you think you're useless, you're still going to be useless. And you'll think, geez, I don't know why I did that, because they must not realize what I know, which is I'm shit, you know? So it's mad. It's like, as much as you can, it doesn't matter who you measure up, they're all going home with their own head. And that's all it is, like, you know?
That's it, man. That's it.
Yeah.
Mad, isn't it?
Mad.
We've taken up a huge amount of your evening, man. If people want to jump on board the journey and see what you're up to next and whatnot, where can they get you?
I would say rossbrowne.com, right? But the problem is I built it for desktop, and when you click on it on a phone, it's all over the fucking shop, right? It's like buy tickets, and it's like, for what gig? They're all over the fucking shop. So it's just socials. It's Ross Browne Official, and Brown has got an E at the end of it. So yeah, Ross Browne Official on TikTok, Ross Browne Official on Instagram, and for the 4 people that are on Facebook, Ross Browne, I think it is. So I'm not on Snapchat.
No, that's a teenager's game in this day and age.
Yeah.
Look, man, amazing. Thanks so much for your time.
Enjoyed that chat, Ross. That was deadly.
No, thanks a million, lads.
Absolutely brilliant. And yeah, look, keep doing it. It's brilliant. The radio is great, but the comedy shows and everything else, man, just more success to you.
Yeah, well, listen, Fergal said he wants to break the record for the most returning gift. A guest. I'm coming on from. I'm starting at 1, lads, but I'm gonna.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm coming to
Absolutely.
pass out Fergal. Fuck that. I'm gonna have to achieve some
Yeah.
more things and come back to you. Do a
We'll
couple of
get you
murders.
again,
I'll do a
100%.
couple of murders.
Yeah, the true crime thing is fucking blown up everywhere. So
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'll stalk a
that'll work for
comedian
us as
from
well.
Scotland.
brilliant.
Amazing. Ross Browne, thank you so much, man.
Cheers,
Thanks,
lads.
Ross.
Take it easy.
Brilliant chat. Brilliant chat. Love that. And as we said at the top of the show, as they say in the industry, check out Ross on socials and for his upcoming gigs and all that kind of crack as well. Mad
What
that
a gentleman.
spent the entire first season of the fair trying to get punched.
As I said, right, I remember watching. I loved the fair because I loved Naked Camera, and I was looking to see if it was going to revisit the glory of Naked Camera, and in many aspects it did. But I
Yeah.
remember thinking, watching Ross's sketches and trying to get the public, and I remember thinking, saying to myself, "This lad is very brave." I actually think I wrote a Facebook status update at the time because that was the cool thing to do.
Yeah.
Challenging him. Not knowing him, but putting the challenge out there to try and do one of those pranks to my grandmother Betty, because Betty would have battered him. But
Yeah. Betty's not
that's
to
a
be
true
messed with.
story. I remember thinking, this lad is very brave, and then for him to admit that someone hit him on the second season makes perfect sense.
It does indeed, yeah. Brilliant. The fear was brilliant. It's weird because I'd kind of half forgotten about the fear, and then when we started getting Ross on the podcast, now I remember going, "What TV show was he on?" I looked it up. I can't believe how long ago it was. Like
Oh,
it's
stop! That made me sick.
yeah,
12 years ago, was it?
something like that. Yeah, but it's just yeah, time
Do you
flies.
remember the water meter prank Hillary did on the
Yeah,
fair?
yeah, yeah. Unbelievable, unbelievable, man.
Classic.
But yeah, anyway, big thanks to Ross, and yeah, I'm.
It's a pity there's no longevity in those prank shows, just because they get sussed out.
I was gonna say the problem Ireland is too small to have longevity in those things. Like if you're doing it in America and bigger countries where you can travel around more and it's but like after one season you're gonna start getting rumbles left, right, and center because people start to
Yeah, yeah.
recognize you too quickly. And it's it's one of those things where you're a victim of your own success because the funnier and more popular it is, the more you're gonna get noticed. So the harder it is to pull off a show like that. And
Absolutely,
um,
absolutely.
but anyway, yeah, right. Well, I don't have a huge amount there. Anything you want to talk about? Anything you want to acknowledge
No,
or no?
Bulls progressed to the semi-finals of the National Cup.
They
We
did.
beat Northeast Thunder 61-49. We got a lot of our development players game time, so delighted. Great result.
Fantastic. And the annual pilgrimage to my now home county of Laois will be taking place very soon. I'll be going along to cheer on the Bulls.
October 19th, Saturday, October 19th, 10 a.m. Ballyrock Bulls versus Clonaslee.
That's it. That's it. Brilliant.
Clonaslee have a new player, number 4, young lad. I think he's only 16, single leg amputee, and he's excellent.
You need me to do that and to
We'll talk about it off air, but perhaps maybe infiltrate his tires or something.
yeah, no problem, no problem.
Yeah,
I know a few of the local lads down here started to make contacts, so
perfect.
we can, brilliant. Right, well, look, that is it for this week. We'll be back next week, and then we have a little break planned because Mero is going limousine riding and Jeff Lyon, and all that kind of crack. And
Absolutely.
what is it, Rovers in Europe? Is that what you're?
No, this one is Ireland in the Nations League.
Oh, it's the international break.
Yeah, going to Helsinki, doing the double header away to Finland and away to Greece
Oh,
for my
lovely.
sins. Yeah.
Jesus, that's a lot of air miles you're clocking up.
Yeah, so going on the 9th and back on the 15th.
Very good. And will you be going to Stamford Bridge?
Yes.
You are going Wednesday.
That's leaving on Wednesday, the 18th of November.
Very good.
Back on Friday, the 20th. The match is the 19th. And then going to Vienna as well. Sorry, Chelsea's December. Sorry, Chelsea's the week before Christmas. Vienna is the end of November.
Very good.
Yeah, so going to Vienna and Chelsea, yeah.
Lovely. Right.
Big chance of Rovers potentially getting to the playoffs in
No,
that
there's
in
not.
February.
No, there's not.
There is. I
There's
think you only
not.
have to get 7 points.
They're not going to.
Could beat Larne, TNS,
They won't.
and potentially the Bosnian team.
They won't. They scraped past Bohemians recently, Graham. They're not up to it. They're
When we
washed.
play them,
They are washed, Graham.
at least Bohemians will know if they've survived the relegation battle or not.
They will survive the relegation battle.
I think they will too.
There's no fear of that. You would think Shamrock Rovers Football Club would have a little bit more humility given their season has been, considering their absolutely disgusting levels of wealth and pomp and everything else, and they're absolutely shit this season. So
Until next week.
I thought I'd get more of a rise out of you for that. Anyway, right, okay, go on. Yeah, clear eyes.
No, where can people listen to us?
Oh, for fuck's sake, gee, I'm forgetting.
Search WTS Pod on any podcast provider. Go to WTSpod.com. Go to Podcast Republic, Podbean, Stitcher, everywhere, anywhere, Spotify. Just search WTS Pod. He's at Danjo Murray. I'm at Merrigan Mania. We're at Instagram at WTS Pod as well. And that's it. Until next week. Clear eyes.
Full hearts.
Lose. See you next week.